Welcome to the Pencilhouse podcast. I'm Jason McClone, Pencilhouse's founder. This is a three-part mini-series about Pencilhouse's origin story, which is actually a bit of a story about relearning how to write that I'd like to share with you. There's also some nuts and bolts craft talk happening along the way that I hope is valuable for you as well, so please keep dialed in. And with that, this is episode 1 of the origin story. Thanks for listening. Like I said in the intro, this limited podcast series is about the circumstances under which Pencilhouse came to be, as well as my poetry chapbook, Look How We Are. It's a pretty crazy story, so kick back and let's talk about the time I got absolutely obliterated by a car in 2015. I can make the story circle-shaped if I start before I got hit by a car. Earlier that year, I'd returned to writing after a layoff of a few years, just getting my family started and working and, doing the middle-class survival thing. And it was really right around this same time that I was taking those stories that I had been working on and was starting to submit them and things like that. So at the end of July 2015, I was out for a run, and I was running about 20 miles a week at this point, so pretty regular. I was out for a run, and so this is the point where I get hit by a car. But I gotta say, as I'm telling this story, my brain has tended to freeze up on me a little bit and kind of hold me at this point, at this moment. I intellectually know that this is the point at which I got hit by a car, and all of the details that I know happened after I got hit by a car, but I only know them because they've been relayed to me by various people and through various avenues, like police reports and third-party witnesses, and my wife, who heard it from a doctor, who heard it from the first responder on scene, or some other avenue. So, when I think about what happened, it just causes my brain to stop, because I know that there's nothing there, and all these details are just kind of getting filled in. So my memories around this entire incident are, or seem like they're, only half mine, but that period of time between impact and when I wake up is completely empty. There's nothing that I actually confidently remember other than imagining myself in a first-person perspective doing the things that I've been told that I did. But I'd love to imagine that they were way cooler than they actually probably were. So, here's what I'm told happened for the next hour or so. To set the scene, There are a couple of cars at this intersection stopped, and I have the right of way. I can very clearly see the white figure attached to the telephone pole across the street telling me to walk. And so I do. And I remember lights to my immediate left, and that's the point at which everything stops. The driver was texting and driving, going about 15 over the speed limit, and didn't see the red light that had changed when he was about 300 yards up the road. When he hit me, I was on the driver's side of his car. According to the police report, I flew about 20 feet in the air. My shoes were knocked off, and I was in the middle of the intersection. I'd gone through the car's windshield and was thrown into the street about 20 to 30 feet. The cars that were stopped at the intersection both called 911 and both provided statements to the police that responded first. I have no memory of this, but apparently the responding officer had to convince me to stay on the ground. I evidently wanted to go finish my run and head home. By some stroke of luck, I was able to remember my wife's phone number, so they were able to call her and arrange what hospital to take me to, etc., etc. I'd love to be humorous about this, and ordinarily when I tell the story to people directly, I try to make it as funny as I can. For some reason, I just find myself talking about it seriously in a room alone by myself, which is something that I've never really done before, and I gotta say, I don't fucking love it. But we're doing this for a reason, right? So I'm in the trauma ward, and that is kind of where I wake up. The thing that kind of shakes me awake more than anything else is Jill showing up, my wife showing up. I remember asking what happened to my bike, because for some reason I thought I had been hit by a car while I was on my bike. I remember wanting to lay down, and they let me lay down, and then I passed out a couple of times because I think I didn't have enough blood in me. I remember being told that they added some transfusion unit or two. I tried to get people to explain what was going on, what my injuries were. They told me. It was a lot. I had obviously, pretty solid concussion. So I was out for about an hour. I had a cracked skull on my left side of my head. Broken jaw up at the top, like near the hinge of where the old mandible meets. My jaw was also broken in the middle of the mandible at the bottom. I had 3 or 4 cracked vertebrae in my neck. My fibula was broken in my left leg, and I didn't find out about that until several weeks after the accident. My ear almost came off. They did repair that, and they did a great job. It looks great. It looks like a regular ass ear. Finally, there was a wound that required an untold number of stitches and about 40 staples. The scar goes from about my chest to behind my ear, and I look at it every single day. In terms of treatment, I'm fitted with one of those hard neck braces, and I'm told to basically lay down until I feel better. To repair my jaw, they put in a couple titanium plates, and so I was in surgery for that. At the same time, they installed brackets in my jaw so that I could be rubber banded shut. Eventually, they would take those out with a screwdriver and a little bit of local anesthetic. For the most part, recovery looked like a lot of laying down, a lot of listening to music. My wife had to clean my wounds every day, and I don't really know how she did that without freaking out every single time. Yeah, I obviously owe her an endless debt of gratitude. One thing I didn't get treatment for was a traumatic brain injury. Despite having the big concussion that I'd had, the doctors basically just said, "You seem to be okay. If there's any medical problem, let us know. You don't know what you're going to get with these kinds of things. Good luck." That was basically what they said. And the net effect there has been a pretty faulty short-term memory, a highly distractible attention span, and sometimes halting manner of speech. I've put in a lot of hours editing this, for example. Sometimes it's a lot to deal with. So, anyway. Within a few weeks, I was able to get up and run around. And by about 6 weeks, I was able to get back out into the world again, despite having a broken leg still. Even though I had a story published after the accident that I'd submitted before the accident, I really kind of forgot about writing almost, because I was pretty preoccupied with just getting on with life and making sure that I could do the things that I wanted to keep doing. At the time, our kids were young, and our family life was really just kind of starting to pick up steam. So to have an injury like this was pretty hugely interruptive to all of our lives. 2, it came at a time in my own personal development where I maybe needed a lot of help. So there's a metaphorical rap on the head that comes through literally, I guess. The point is, this is another stretch where I wasn't writing a lot. Smash cut to the pandemic, because this is always going to be a pandemic story. Like everybody else, I'm stuck at home and get the proverbial wild hair and decide to take a crack at some writing, which goes horribly. Over the last couple of years, I've written a couple of essays about how I basically lost my creative voice, or lost my access to my creative voice. And I wish I could explain it better than that, because it really just felt like it felt not dissimilar to walking down a hallway and then turning to a doorway that is no longer there. So the desire to get back into writing was scary, instead of this return to something that I loved doing. So to be met with absolute silence was pretty alarming to me. I'm not talking about writer's block here. This went totally beyond that. It was like I didn't have that part of my inner monologue, like it was just gone. And I managed to not notice, because I wasn't exercising those muscles, for a pretty extended period of time. And I don't know, maybe that's a bullshit explanation, but that's what it felt like at the time, I think, as I look back on it now. So it was alarming, it was depressing, it was frightening, and at the same time, it's just one of those things that could happen if you take a rap on the head like that. And it's totally dumb luck, but that was the situation that I was in. And I still wanted to write. I still wanted to engage writing in some way. I wanted to at least participate in that community in some way, whether it was publishing or just editing or helping people in some way or another. I also wanted to get back to actually doing writing myself, and after kind of racking my brain, I arrived at the simplest answer, which was, why don't you just write critiques for a while? It was something that I loved to do. It was something that I loved to do while I was in grad school and even in undergraduate. So I found a couple online communities and joined those and started writing feedback here and there. And built up to a pretty regular regiment of writing feedback pretty frequently, almost every day, if I could make that happen. And I found that muscle kind of returning a little bit, and I found myself in a situation where I had a routine. And that didn't necessarily specifically inform the content of any writing that I was doing, but it definitely helped me develop a pathway back to writing, and it's basically responsible for Pencilhouse. Ultimately, I just feel like I owe a lot to the act of writing feedback, and I kind of want to evangelize a little bit about its value. So I wanted to start this series by telling my story, kind of where I'm coming from, and I want to take the next episode to talk about how I approach writing feedback generally. And then I want to take a third episode to talk through how I apply feedback to my own writing, and I'll use a couple examples of that as well. So, see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to this first episode of the series. If you'd like to support what we're doing here at Pencilhouse, there are a few ways you can do that. First, consider becoming a patron on our Patreon page. Your contributions help us continue to offer our services and resources for the writing community, and in return, you can submit to Pencilhouse whenever you want. You'll get access to exclusive content and updates. You'll get free digital copies of our literary magazines to your readers, and more. We're also currently running a couple of GoFundMe campaigns, and you can find direct links to those right at the top of pencilhouse.org. One more way to get involved at Pencilhouse is through volunteering, and you can do that at pencilhouse.org/volunteers. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review the podcast, smash whatever you're supposed to smash. We'll see you in the next.